Topic on meal times and picky eaters and how to get them trying a variety of foods.
Just a few things. I agree with Mick. It's so frustrating. One thing I offer to families is offer them one food you know that they'll eat, and then the rest should be what you're having as a family. So it kind of gives you a little balance of being like hard, but you know they'll eat something, so you know that they're not going to starve. But the rest should be, you know, you need to try what we're having and eat. So it kind of gives you a little bit of the best of both worlds. And I always encourage families to think about the week of eating and not the day of eating. Because if you think about like the entire week of those ups and downs of how hungry toddlers are and what they'll eat, you can say, you know, they're eating actually pretty decently. But if you focus on one day or one meal, they're awful because they had a bite of a pancake for breakfast. So if you look at that, it can make you feel a little bit better about what they're eating too. And then avoiding sweetened drinks too, because that a lot of kids, they love juice, they love milk even. They want to fill up on those drinks and they'll drink, and then they're full and they don't want to eat anything. So either avoid drinks initially with the meal and then offer it like halfway in between, or just give water with meals.
Toothbrushing can feel scary for young children at first, right? Putting this unknown object in their mouth and doing something that feels kind of funny to their teeth.
Right.
What are some good techniques that you can offer parents for their children, especially if they are apprehensive at first, or you know, it's not a pleasant experience at first when they first start?
Right. So the first thing would be giving the toothbrush to the child, not necessarily for them to be brushing themselves, but when we're at the infant toddler age range, we're always encouraging parents to just like have their kid hold the brush, feel it, kind of go around like their lips, go around their mouth, under their nose, just to get that oral sensation, and kind of get used to it. The other thing is, you know, sometimes we'll do, like in my office as well, like role playing, like use stuffed animals and show how you're doing it on a stuffed animal before you start doing it with your child, and let your child partake in that so they can kind of be a part of the process.
Absolutely. It reduces the fear of the unknown a little bit, right?
Right.
They're starting to develop their own muscles around self-regulation, and you are acting more as a consultant and reviewing their use with them and saying, it looks like this week we had, 3 hours a day of screen time. How did that feel to you? Did you get balance? Did you, one rule of thumb I give parents is if they have 3 hours of screen time a day, what does that mean about the rest of their day? Right? Did they get 3 hours of being outside in fresh air, getting exercise, social engagement, reading, schoolwork, all the other things that we know track to long-term health? And so it's much better in the long run to have that conversation with them so that they can be reflective and start to come up with solutions than it is for us to say, nope, you had 3 hours today, I'm ratcheting it back, right? Because we're not helping them build the long-term skills that they need.
You had mentioned, being careful not to get too much into it to where you bring up all those emotions and perhaps start the cycle all over again. If there's a point where a child says, I don't want to talk about it, or, is very clearly not interested in addressing or uncovering what the problem was, is that worrisome? Should we just honor those wishes? At what point do we become worried, I guess, as parents, that they're not wanting to talk about what it is that's making them feel that way?
Sure. And I'm sure while they're upset, that they're going to say, right, they're going to say that, they're going to say plenty of other things. They're going to tell you that you're a bad parent. They don't mean it, I promise you. But again, that's just them not knowing sort of what their words mean, really. It's fine. Acknowledge it. I think that's important. Let them know that you're going to bring it back up later, but you're, respecting their preference, that they don't want to talk about it right now. We're going to revisit this at a later time. Move on, see what happens. But again, make sure you're bringing it back up, because they just might need a little bit more space, and that's fine, right? They've learned to let you know that I need some space. I need some time to calm down from this. Great. But we're still going to talk about it later.
There's a lot of really nice sensory bins, just online, but Pinterest has some really nice strategies too. Even rice and beans, it does not have to be fancy, just something that the child can see what it's going to be like. And then even talking through the different properties of that bin can help regulate or maintain their sensory system too. So, hey, this feels a little bumpy, or this feels a little bit dry.
talking through some of that just to build that language. So then when they are wearing socks that feel itchy or painful or however way, they're able to gather that language that you had primed them with to give you a better understanding of what those socks actually feel like.
But when they step into a classroom with other kids, it's a little bit different. It's going, hey, I'm still playing with that. You may have to wait a little bit. And us as parents and as adults, it's kind of our job to like help mirror that, to like ease them into it, and making sure they understand that in those difficult situations, there are different ways that you can address it and talk about it by saying, hey, I'm not ready yet. And you can tell, other people know, and it is okay. I always used to advocate for the kids in my classroom and be like, you can tell your friends no, it's all right. You can ask them to please wait for you, because that's a part of life.
Yes. And I would tell the children, if you want a turn, you have to ask, can I have a turn when you're done? So that just because you want it doesn't mean they have to give it up. It doesn't mean you get it now. Can I have a turn when you're done? So parents role playing with their children before they go. If you're doing an activity, maybe you're coloring. Can I have the brown crayon when you're done? Okay, it's my turn with the brown crayon. And then when you're done, giving it back and saying, okay, now it's your turn with the crayon. So they learn that back and forth and the give and take of being in a classroom with children where you have to share materials and share space.
Babies are either taking breast milk or formula until 5 to 6 months of life, and that is truly the only thing that you should be feeding them at that point. No water, no nothing, just breast milk or formula. Then when they hit the 5 to 6 month mark, we can start to think about actual food introduction. There's kind of two general categories by which parents will choose to feed their children. There's one camp that's the baby-led weaning camp, and then there's the other camp that is more of the puree side. A lot of families have started to combine the two of these together. The baby-led weaning families are baby-led weaning in general. I'll give kind of a brief description of this is when you are not giving them purees, but instead you're giving them actual pieces of food, something that they are able to pick up and feed to themselves. So before babies are ready to do baby-led weaning, they definitely need to have hit some milestones. This includes that they need to have good kind of trunk and head support. They need to be able to sit upright, and they need to be able to actually pick up the food and put it into their mouth, because you are not feeding them. This is totally, it's baby-led, so that means they are in charge of what they are actually putting into their mouths. You are in charge of what ends up on their tray, but they are in charge of actually getting it into their mouths. On the other side of that are the families who choose to go the puree route. And in those cases, sometimes those kids can actually start just a smidgen earlier because they don't need the dexterity of being able to pick up food and put it in their own mouths. And it instead is the parent who is feeding it to them. I generally recommend to families that we're starting with fruits and vegetables. It doesn't really make that much of a difference which one you're choosing, other than, to make sure that you're only doing one food at a time, just to, in case there's any sort of allergies that might develop, that you are able to kind of identify which food is the culprit. There's a really important study that was done, a couple of years back that specifically said that early introduction of food, actually, of highly allergenic foods like peanut, actually decreases the risk of your child develop an allergy. So this is a really important thing that families need to be aware of and know, that as opposed to what we used to tell families, years ago, was that we should delay allergenic food introduction. It was exactly the opposite.
So what are some examples of how you feel like self-care can positively impact you and your family?
Well, when we think about self-care, and whether it be going to a nail appointment or actually physically exercising, it's a chance to recharge our batteries. It's a chance to focus on ourselves, right? It's almost as though everything around us is kind of quieted and it's just our time for ourselves. And so if we think about fitness, what you're doing is when you're actually exercising, you're releasing the feel-good hormones, endorphins. You actually feel better. And so what you're doing is you're improving your energy. And when people say, well, I'm tired, I don't have time to exercise because I'm too tired, it does the opposite. Moving will actually give you energy. It also provides you with focus, right? It makes you motivated. If you think about it, Brittany, when you move in the morning, you feel energized. You're more apt to get productive things done right in the morning, right? That's me and John, we also like to work out in the morning. You set the tone for your day. But as John was talking about before, about filling up your cup first so then you can give to others, I call it the trickle effect. you're able, when you prioritize your self-care, it's going to positively influence other areas of your life, like your family, like your work, your friendships, right? Your relationships. You're more willing to give energy into those other facets of your life so that when your kids get home from school or from daycare, you have energy to go play with them. And that's huge because they'll remember that. I know my fondest memories as a kid was playing soccer with my mom or playing basketball with my dad and crossing him up and having him fall and leaving a sweat stain on the, love you, Dad, on the pavement. But I remember that because I cherished that. And it's, my parents could only do that because they prioritized their health. And so, like John said, fill your cup up first. It's like when you're on an airplane. Put your mask on first and then help others. Same thing with self-care. Prioritize your self-care so that you can give a better version of yourself to those ones that you love most around you.
So I don't know if the proper term is sleep regression or changes in sleep practices. If we talk a little, I just want to talk a little bit about that and provide our listeners some hope on the stage that we often
gets
all
better.
face.
Yeah.
It does eventually. Yeah, sleep regressions definitely happen. And usually we'll see them either around, if baby gets sick, if you guys have a change in your routine, if they start daycare, if they start having a sitter, those big life changes are going to affect your baby too. So keeping that in mind. And they also happen around big developmental milestones. So the big one that we all kind of dread first is the 4-month sleep regression. So the big motor milestone that they're doing is rolling around that age between 4 and 6 months. So when their little brains and their bodies want to practice the skill that they're learning and they're slowly acquiring these skills, their bodies keep going. So letting them practice that skill throughout the day. So as much tummy time as you can and free play time, helping them get those skills and get that strength built up is going to be so helpful to decrease the length of time that regression is. And then when you do see those sleep regressions, trying not to change what you're doing with your sleep routine and keeping them in, what you typically will do around bedtime or around if they wake up, not making it a big production when they wake up and trying to get them back to bed and getting in the routine. If you're used to putting them down to go to sleep, then continue to put them down, even though they're a little more resistant.
I remember just buying like a cheap pair of walkie-talkies and giving my child a sense of power. When I was tied up with the baby, I would tell him, I said, hey, you're in charge. You're the security guy. And he would be like checking the windows and like going in the different rooms and talking to me on the walkie-talkie. And this gave us a sense of like, it was a fun way to play and interact and give him a sense of power. He loved playing that game, but he would also check on his baby brother and check on me. And so it gave him that sense of feeling a different role in a playful way, but also processing and healing those feelings that he was having when his baby brother.
Yeah, they learn from how we model things and modeling, hey, I just had a hard moment and I'm going to calm myself down and I'm going to take a breath is an absolute gift for them because they're learning. Oh, it's okay. It's okay to make a mistake. Yeah. And it's okay to then recover from that mistake. And, again, everyone has big feelings. Everybody gets really tired. Everybody gets grumpy. But what can we do with that? So taking that moment right in front of your child and saying, guys, I'm feeling like there's so many things going on right now, and I'm starting to feel a little bit upset. So I'm going to breathe. It would be helpful for you if we can all take a moment and be quiet for a second.
Yeah.
You're modeling responsibility. You're modeling how you handle when you're upset. You're not making your upset everybody else's problem. You're taking ownership of it. And that's a powerful thing to model.
Yeah, yeah. And then helping them practice that empathy. Can I consider how mom or dad or teacher or whoever is feeling right now and give them what they need to just regulate and come back to it in a moment? I love that.
Our medicine or we don't take medicine, but we are feeling better. At what point can we come back to school?
Yes, that is a great question that I hear a lot. So one thing that you mentioned is we're feeling better. So we don't want to send our kids to school if they're just going to be feeling miserable, huddled up in a corner, not participating. That's no fun for anybody, right? Assuming they are feeling better, we need to make sure that they have been fever-free for 24 hours on their own. So that means fever-free without any fever-reducing medication like Tylenol or Motrin. We also need to make sure that they haven't had any episodes of throwing up or diarrhea in the last 24 hours. And if you're ever in doubt, I always recommend touching base with your medical provider.